Hey, folks, welcome back to the Husker Big Red YouTube channel. I'm Chris Peterson, and joining me, as always, is Danny Gillette. And we're back here on this Thursday morning to talk about some of the recent moves, flurry of moves made by Nebraska basketball. So, we're going to break down some of these transfers. We have 3 new additions, 1 subtraction. We're going to touch on all that, and then we're going to break down the Nebraska basketball depth chart and let's see what we kind of foresee the rotation being next season. So, before we get into that, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, get into the comment section. Let us know what you think the rotation is going to look like or the depth chart. And so, yeah, Danny, how are you doing on this Thursday morning?
I'm doing well. My fingers hurt a little bit from typing, but that's always a good thing. I think this team is coming along nicely.
Yeah, I agree. It has been busy. It's like every time you open up X or social media, there's a new commitment or a new trend. So that was kind of fun. 2 commitments in one day on Wednesday. So you don't see that a lot. But Fred Hoiberg is comfortable in the transfer portal. We've seen that again. Kind of has to be with this team. But looking back to what Monday, they added Jamarcus Lawrence Monday afternoon after we recorded our previous episode. So we'll get into that. He's going to come back and be the point guard. And then I guess as a move, I think that's correlated to that, Nick Janowski entered the transfer portal.
I
So that
agree.
was kind of a bummer. And then kind of bouncing back up and picking up our spirits, the Huskers added Will Cooper on Wednesday morning and then added Kendall Blue from St. Thomas, a 6'6" guard. Cooper, a 6'7" wing who is from Omaha, played 1 year at Air Force. Not a ton of time, but he did over the last month of the season averaged 11 points per game, shot 37% from 3, made 23. So, we talked about it a bunch off the air, but Fred Hoiberg was not joking when he talked about adding more 3-point shooting to this team.
Yeah, he had a goal and he set out to do it and he did it. And you talk about a busy couple of days, a busy week. This really started with Price Sanford, and you and I were kind of talking about how the college basketball crown affect recruiting in the transfer portal, as to would it distract the coaching staff from recruiting, and the answer is no. I mean, I know some people were kind of were kind of upset that the Huskers had Zoom calls and things like that, but I think the college basketball crown allowed players and transfers to see the type of style Nebraska basketball wanted to play and see where they would fit. And so I know a lot of people didn't like the crown. I wasn't a fan of it, but between actually winning the thing and also allowing recruits a chance to see where what Nebraska basketball is, I think the returns overall were good. Not to mention that it outdrew the NIT and in terms of viewership.
Yeah, I think the NIT's cooked. I mean, all these people who are like Nebraska didn't even win the NIT. The NIT's done. Like the crown has surpassed the NIT. Like the field was. I mean, look at the Final Four. It was like Chattanooga against. I don't even know who it was. Like, who cares? Like, it's a mid-major tournament now, and it's not even. They don't even play the semifinals in Madison Square Garden. So like, the NIT is, for all intents and purposes, like it's done as a tournament. Like I totally feel that the crown has surpassed it and will surpass it. Just because you have bigger names. And I think the format's better. The NIT spread out over 3 weeks, whereas the Crown is during the week leading up to the Final Four when there's no other basketball and fans want basketball, and you have more recognizable program names and team names, and I just think it's a better format, at least for what it is, right? I mean, it's like trying to keep if you're trying to keep attention on the crown for 3 weeks, like I think that would be difficult to do, but doing it for 4 or 5 days, I think is much more doable. And I have more of an appetite for that. And it was like they served it up as kind of like an appetizer to the Final Four, for the semifinal games on Saturday. And I thought it was perfect. Like they didn't try to compete with it. They found the time when like, hey, when are people kind of withdrawing from basketball? And then they put games right there. And to me, the best thing was like, I just like watching this team play. I like Bryce Williams and Juwan Gary. So I was glad that they got a chance, and we discovered Cale Jacobson, who's going to, I believe, have a role on this team. So yeah, the crown worked out well for Nebraska. I do think it showed some of their culture too. And how these guys want to play for each other, because there's other teams that could have played in this tournament that didn't, right? Like Northwestern, didn't want to play, and some other teams. Rutgers, I think, was another one. So I'm glad Nebraska played, and yeah, they were able to have Price Sanford last Friday, and Ugnis Jurocephagis, probably messing that name up. Sorry, but trying the best that I can.
I think he did well with that. Yeah.
But he's a really exciting player too. I think that adds a lot of intrigue to this roster. We both have talked about how we kind of like how this roster is coming together. But yeah, Kendall Blue, in terms of the other commitment this week, to me, that's the guy that I'm not saying he's a like for like replacement of Bryce Williams, but he's a lot like Bryce Williams in the sense that he can score, from all over the court. I mean, he's a really effective, scorer in the mid range. He can get to the rim. He actually, even though he shot 41% from three last year, in this past season, but 2 years ago, he actually led the Summit League in field goal percentage. I mean, as a 6'6" wing, I think that's pretty impressive and shows you the kind of ability he has, attacking the rim and hitting those mid-range jump shots.
He's not a exact replacement for Bryce Williams, but he's pretty damn close. I mean, when you look at their styles of game, they both have the mid-range jumper. They both can drive to the rim. They both can shoot, and so although he's not an exact carbon copy of Bryce Williams, he does a lot of the same things that Williams did. And to me, that's why this was my favorite commitment so far, just because he adds that shooting presence. He adds that, mid-range shot. He can get to the line. He can finish at the rim. It was really impressive to see him do all these things. And I know fans, and I know we were bummed about losing Bryce, but I think we got a good replacement here.
And yeah, looking back at what Bryce did before he came to Nebraska at Charlotte, he averaged the year before he transferred, he averaged 13.8 points per game, 1.2 assists, 5 rebounds, shot 53% from the field from 2, 39% from 3, 40% from the field overall. So like you can see a lot of similarities, I think, with Kendall Blue. His usage rate is pretty high, 22%. Bryce's was 27% that season before he transferred. And I think the fact that he can take his game I think this is one thing about Fred Hoiberg, and this is why I think, and I wish that some Nebraska fans would value him more, but he really does have a knack for taking these guys from these mid-major conferences and helping them develop into something. I mean, Bryce Williams, averaged 13 a game in Conference USA or whatever. I think that's what it is. And he bumped that up to 20 points per game with Nebraska. I mean, you look at Keisei Tominaga, came from a junior college and was third team All Big Ten. Rank Mass was, came from the Missouri Valley Conference and also was an all conference, I think second or third team All Big Ten. So, I mean, Fred definitely has an ability to take these guys from lower conferences and develop them into, professional caliber players. I mean, Tominaga's in the G League. I think Bryce has a good chance of, if he doesn't get drafted, he'll be in the G League too. I mean, the NBA would be stupid to pass up on him with all the shot making that he's got. Rink is probably going to be playing professional. I know that people, are kind of down on Berke, Buchtenjel, but he's got a professional future too. So I just feel like, if I was like someone like Kendall Blue or a mid-major guy that wants to play professional basketball, Nebraska's a place I would very much consider, because Fred has shown that he can help these guys, reach their potential at Nebraska.
Wasn't Rank Mass the mid-major too?
Yeah, yep. He came from the Missouri Valley Conference, and his first year transfers up and is, an all-conference player in the Big Ten. So, I mean, I think Fred deserves some credit for that.
Absolutely, and I'm excited to see him back on the court. But anyway, I like how this lineup shakes out and how different combinations can shake out. And I know we'll get to it here in a second, but I like the depth on this team. And I know I said it last year, but I feel like this edition of Nebraska basketball has that shooting that they've been missing for so long. And it's not going to be predicated on one or two players scoring the basketball. They can score from everywhere now.
Yeah, and going back to Jamarcus Lawrence, which I think is an interesting pickup. And I know some fans, I'd seen the comment of, he only averaged 9.9 points per game or whatever. Like, I get that, but Jamarcus, the thing is, he's not like a super high usage, type of player, but he is an effective playmaker. He only played 28 minutes per game last year. So, I mean, he could even bump that up a little bit. I'm not sure if that'll happen in Nebraska, just with the way that their guard rotation is working out, but he shot 39% from 3 last year. And even if you look back at, his time with Nebraska, a very effective 3-point shooter, made 22 as a freshman, 45 as a sophomore, and he's thought 35% for his career. He adds some playmaking. I think he's a good defender, and he's really quick too. He's a really kind of quick player at attacking the basket. And I think him and Kendall Blue too is another guy that adds some playmaking. So you see both of those guards, both of them can, play out of ball screens. They can both attack the basket. So I just feel like, his 3-point shooting as well, gives Nebraska kind of that floor spacing element. And it was a bummer to lose, Nick Janowski. And it's just like we've talked about, high school recruiting for Nebraska is going to be a tough thing because, there's a lot of good players in Omaha. They got one in Will Cooper, but, some of the better ones seem to, go to Creighton or go to these other places. And then, if you're not getting a top 100 guy who's, in your rotation right away as a freshman, then it's just hard to keep those guys. And it's, high school recruiting is just difficult. It seems like, even if you have a 3 or 4 person class, even in the best case scenario, you're probably only keeping, maybe 1 or 2 of those guys moving forward because they just don't have the patience and they want the role. It's like I feel like every season now it's a year-to-year deal. And, I think I said this before the other day, but the player and the team both have to agree on like what their role is going to be and also what the money's going to be, because it could be a situation where, Janowski's like, I know I can play more minutes than I'm playing at Nebraska. And if I can find that somewhere else, I can get more NIL and I can get, a bigger role. And so I feel like there's just a disconnect with, what he thought his role was going to be and what Nebraska, thought it could be or could guarantee what it could be.
Yeah, high school recruiting is very difficult. And I mean, let's be honest here, Fred doesn't want to do it. And that's not necessarily a, hidden thing. I mean, he's made it very clear he wants us to be a portal team. But I remember just being so excited about Janowski coming in 2 years ago. And we absolutely stole him from Wisconsin. So I am a little bit bummed about that. But I figured once a guy like Lawrence came in and, some of these other, players came in, there wasn't going to be a lot of room for him. So it's very clear that Nebraska is going to be a portal team under Fred Hoiberg, and that's okay. But I think Janowski's departure definitely stings a little bit just because I was excited to see what he could have done.
It does, yeah. And I mean, I think Nebraska, I don't know that Fred's averse to high school recruiting. I think it's just they have to do the portal out of necessity. I mean, and I think that's almost every team. I mean, look at Michigan. I mean, Michigan they won the Big Ten tournament, made the Sweet 16, and like literally 3 days later, their starting point guard transferred out because they wanted to go get another guard. Like it's just such a difficult thing anymore that even the best teams are going to be, getting guys out of the portal. Now, I do believe there is something to the fact that, you want as many returning players back as you can. Then that's something Nebraska's just not going to have as many of, next year. And that's just, it is what it is. But I do think that's why Fred is also trying to add guys that, have multiple years when he can. I mean, like Price Sanford, Will Cooper is another guy that has multiple years to play. I don't think Yurosefit just does. I believe he's has 1 more year, but I'd have to double check on that.
You're correct, I think.
He played 2 years at Baker's. So 3 of these guys are going to be, one and done guys at Nebraska. And that's okay. You don't want your entire team to be, transfer portal. So that's why it would be nice to see some of these guys, have a chance to develop a little bit. I think Will Cooper is, in part somewhat of a replacement, not a like for like replacement for Janowski, but, just another guy that they can develop and, a solid 3-point shooter. Guy that also had injuries his junior and senior year in high school. So if that doesn't happen, he might be more of a highly touted recruit. So I don't know. It's just a difficult thing, I feel like, with Nebraska. And so they're going to have to continually, scout talent out of these mid-major programs. I mean, that's just where they are. Hopefully they get more NIL to be able to do more high school recruiting, but with Creighton around and with their, seemingly unlimited NIL budget almost because they don't have the football program, it's a tough place for Nebraska to be in. But Fred Hoiberg is great in the portal, and I think he's demonstrated he knows how to find talent, and he knows how to get the most out of that talent.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at some of the 2025, commits. You got a guy like Quentin Rhymes who comes from the high school ranks, and so there is a little bit of high school talent or non-transfer portal talent. So It is hard with Creighton. It is hard with Creighton in the state, and it's also hard when you're not the you're not the main sport at your school. And by and large, I think the transfer portal method has worked for Fred over these last 2 seasons. It just hurts to see all these in-state players not come to Nebraska.
Yeah, it does. I mean, the more the more they win, and the more they start to build it. I think hopefully that will change eventually, um, but yeah, just for right now, they have to do the best that they can each year, and I think they've done a pretty solid job with this roster. It reminds me a lot of the 2023-2024 team that made it to the NCAA tournament.
Mhm.
So let's talk about that. Let's look at what the rotation is going to be. Now, there's still a couple of spots available. I believe at least one, maybe two. I have to count up all the roster. And it used to be that there was a 13-man limit, scholarship limit. Now with the new house settlement and roster limits, it's looking like you'll be able to have up to 15 scholarship players. So that's kind of the framework everybody's working off of right now. So like with Cale Jacobson, I think that's a great thing is he's already announced that he's coming back. So he'll be, I'm thinking on, full or a partial scholarship, but either way, looking at this team, let's break it down. Let's just start with the point guard position. We'll go through each one. So I think my starting point guard is going to be Jamarcus Lawrence. I think he's
Mhm.
going to be the guy. I think that's why he came here. And then I think the number two, who's going to kind of get some minutes there, like this year, I think Sam Hoiberg. I think he'll essentially be the backup point guard and do a little bit of ball handling. Of course, I think he'll play off guard too on defense, but that's kind of my for point guard. I would say Lawrence first, and then Sam Hoiberg is kind of the backup.
I agree because Hoiberg brings that defensive element that he is known for, and Lawrence. I mean, as a primary ball handler, I could definitely see where he would fit in this offense. Like we said before, his ability to drive, his ability to get to the hoop and give space to the shooters is important, and so I think Lawrence will be the starter.
Yeah, and I think he's a solid defensive player too.
He is.
Looking back at his time, I wouldn't say he's quite as good as Sam Hoiberg, defensively, but I think he's pretty close to that, and he's very good at checking guards. So he'll be able to add some defensive elements there as well. So looking at the two guard, the off guard position, I think that's going to be Kendall Blue. I think that's pretty clear looking at this roster right now. He is a playmaker, like I said, 2.5 assists per game. He could do some things in ball screens. He's a really good shooter. Can attack the bucket. Has I think one of the few guys on this team that you could put in an isolation situation, and he can go get you a mid-range jump shots, like late shot clock situations, kind of like what we saw this year with Bryce Williams. I think you'll see some of that with Kendall Blue. And then I think the other guy who will probably play quite a bit back there is Sam Hoiberg. I mean, I think he's going to see a lot of time as the first guard off the bench, whether that's at the two position or at the one. I think he's going to have a critical role on this team, and we saw he is one of the best defenders, and he's just a scrappy guy. He's just one of those guys that, when you talk about Nebraska being a gritty team, like Sam Hoiberg, is part of that. So I expect him to be in the mix too. And I also think Cale Jacobson's going to get a little bit of time in the backcourt as well, whether that's, we saw him play a little bit of point guard at the Crown. We saw him play off the ball. And, I think he's just going to be in the mix a little bit there as just kind of a jack of all trades dude coming off the bench.
The combination of Lawrence and Blue on the floor together is exciting. And I think, Blue can provide a little bit of everything, like we talked about a little bit ago. He can drive to the rim, he can shoot, he can provide that offensive spark. And so I definitely agree with that rotation. And I do think Cale is going to see an increased role this season.
Yeah, and I think he could also see some time at the thing is at the three. I think Cale really can see time at the 1, 2, or 3. That's he's kind of an interesting player. Not that you would want him to be a full-time point guard, but he does have the ability to kind of he's just kind of captain fundamental. He makes good passes, right? Like he has good jump stops. He freaking pivots the right way. He just does things you're supposed to do. And for all the things that he did in the Crown, I think I think he had like 1 or 2 turnovers the entire tournament. And so
yeah, he was very efficient.
And teams that like to force turnovers. So anyway, at the 3, I think Price Sanford's going to be the guy there,
Yep.
which is really exciting. I think when you think about a lineup that has Jamarcus Lawrence, that has Kendall Blue, that has bigs who can kind of do the pick and roll stuff. Now you just can't. have Price out there shooting threes. He's also very good around the rim, and I think he will get more attempts. Shot 40% from three last year, but he only played. I think he played like 22 minutes a game, so I think there's definitely room for him to have a bigger role. And as a 6'8" kid, I think he does a better job of finishing. And he's a good cutter. I mean, that's the thing about Iowa's. They know that ball movement type of stuff. So I feel like he'll fit really well in Fred's offense. And we've seen guys who were, like Tominaga was a great mover without the ball. I feel like Price Sanford can do some of that stuff as well, just being a smart player. And I feel like he'll have opportunities. So I think he'll be the first guy as the number 3. And then, like I mentioned, I think we'll see some Cale Jacobson and then Will Cooper a little bit too. I feel like he's probably more a piece for the future, but he can shoot the heck out of the ball. And in the Mountain West is a pretty good conference. So, I mean, he was 6 of 12 from 3 against Fresno State. So I think that just gives them another option and another guy that can play on the wing. So that's how I see that position kind of shaking out.
Nebraska has a ton of shooters at the position, like you just said, 3 right there. And I think when you look at what Price Sanford can bring, not just talking about his ability to finish at the rim, but also just his overall shooting ability. When you look at the guards and Lawrence and Blue, who can kind of penetrate in the paint and kind of go towards the basket, and then you can kick it out to Sanford. I think that's a recipe for success.
Yeah, I believe that too, and just a lot more spacing. There's going to be a lot more spacing. Yeah. I think you're almost going to have everybody on this team who can shoot threes. Where I mean, that just wasn't always the case this year. Like Raleigh Wooster became a point where, it was like you didn't want the ball in his hands because you didn't feel confident with him shooting, and so that you don't want to have a guy like that on the team. Really, I mean, I don't want to say it like that, but there was too many times where there wasn't, offensive threats. So I think the front court is where we're going to see the kind of the most intrigue, I think, with this Nebraska team. And there's you've got Rank Mast, and then Berke Buchtengel, and then Ugnis Jurasefagis. I think those are going to be, the 3 guys we kind of talked about. There might not be a true center. I don't know if you would say that Rank is that, or that Jurasefagis is that, even Berke, but I think they can do enough. I don't know that you need a pure center, but they can all kind of rebound and score down low. How do you? I'll let you go first here. How do you see this front court rotation working out?
Mast, Jurasefagis, and probably Berke. I don't know. You can mix and match a bunch of ways, but if I had to, pick, my 3, those would be the 3.
So who do you see starting? I'll put you on the spot. Who would your starters be?
Mast, and obviously, and then I like Jurasefagis off the bench, but Berke struggled last year, and I'm not gonna throw him off the roster or whatever. But I think Berke for now. That's a tough one. I'm gonna say Berke for now, but I could see Jurasefagis taking over a starting role.
Yeah, I think Rank will be starting. I mean, all indications are that he's going to be healthy. I still worry about him having a transition, kind of getting back, and so as long as he's healthy, I think he's going to start. I think ideally that's he's your 4 or 5, like whatever. It doesn't really matter. He's one of your bigs. And then the other, I think it's just going to be about form, because I know some fans are down on Berke and they're like, oh, we only averaged so many points per game this year. But also Jurasefagis, his previous 2 years, he only averaged like 5 points a game too. Yeah. So, I mean, he went from, not really starting at Cal State Bakersfield to starting at Central Michigan. And he had a great season. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say that, put that down at all, but that's a 1-year deal. Like, can that translate to the Big Ten? I mean, don't think that this guy's going to score 16 points per game in the Big Ten. Now, maybe he can, because Fred, we've seen it before. We've seen Fred help players like Rank and Bryce Williams actually increase their production, once they go to Nebraska. So it's possible, but that's going to be a big leap, especially, I just feel like, he's 6'10" in the MAC, and I feel like 6'10" in the MAC is a lot different than 6'10" in the Big Ten. So, I still think he's an effective low post scorer, and I do think he has a chance to start. I just think it's going to be a really interesting competition between him and Berke. And, if Berke is healthy, like when he played against Ohio State, like that, if he can find that form, like that guy would start. But, if he's hurt and, so it's going to be close. But I think those 3 guys will play a lot. And then another guy, I think, for Nebraska fans to know, Justin Bolus, he redshirted last year. He's from Lincoln, but he played at a JUCO the year before and he scored 15 points a game, 1.2 blocks. So
He's sneaky good, yeah.
Yeah, 6'8", kind of more athletic. Redshirted last year. He's another guy. Brendan Frager is another one who could be in the mix. Probably, just he to me, he's like a 3-4 type. So he could play some minutes if they had to. I do think that they're going to try to probably add some more size in the front court. I think they've got a couple spots left. So they would be nice to find a shot blocker of some sort, another guy with size who can protect the rim, but that might be wishful thinking.
Honestly, after last season's attempt at a shot blocker and a big man, I'm kind of all set with those. I just want guys that can shoot the hell out of the basketball and just score enough to where you don't give up the final 2 points of the game and hold the lead and win. At this point, I just want shooting, and more shooting, and we have shooting. And also, I think it's worth noting, I just looked this up, that Rink Mast is 6'10". So there you go.
Yeah.
I mean, and he can still play that kind of post game if you want to. He's much better shooter, but I think your Sefcic's size shouldn't necessarily be an issue. And I'm not saying that you said it was. I was just thinking in general, because you're right. We don't have a true big man, but honestly, I'm kind of all set with that.
Yeah, like I think Rink will be Rink will be good. You don't need to be 7 foot. My only point was just that I don't think your Sefcich, he'll see more guys that are 6'10".
Right.
That was, but yeah, I get. And Rink is, Rink on its 2-point percentage a couple years ago, 48%. So yeah, he's not quite as dangerous in the low post as as probably Sefcich is, and that's why I think it's nice to have that high low, and he was really good with that. When he had Josiah Leak, and I would say that Sefcich is a better low post scorer, a more skilled low post scorer.
Yeah.
So, and you look at just the way that these guys can play, man. You're going to have Rink out there, a true pick and pop threat with Kendall Blue and Jamarcus Lawrence. Both of those guys. If teams play drop coverage, they can step up and hit that mid-range shot. If teams want to hedge, Rink can pop out and they can shoot the three. They've also got, shooters on the wings. So I feel like there's just a lot of fun pieces on this team, and it's not going to have to be, it's going to be different offensively, but it's going to be more like it was 2 years ago. I don't know if we're going to have, the Tominaga of it, but it's going to be more balanced where it's not going to be Bryce Williams. Because really this season,
yeah,
I mean, I said it in every single one of my previews for the Crown, though, is that for Nebraska to win, one of my keys is that Bryce and Juwan have to score 40 points together. And that's basically, if they didn't combine for 40 points, unless somebody else just like went off, it was going to be hard for them to win. They just didn't have enough scoring.
And they were tired. You could tell they were tired. And I don't blame them at all. They had to carry the scoring load. But
that's the thing about the Big Ten, man. That 20 game schedule is absolutely brutal, and I think that just wore them down. And so,
you started to see kind of like November, February, even the end of January, or the beginning of January, excuse me, when we lost all those close games. I mean, that schedule was brutal. So it'll be good to have some 3-point shooting, and I think, for whatever Sefcich lacks in size and scoring ability on the inside, they now can get that scoring from the perimeter, and that's not something they've had in at least 2 seasons. Tominaga definitely in 2023, 2024, but I don't think that there's been this volume of shooters for Nebraska in quite some time.
Yeah, and actually, geez, we left out Connor Esigian as the so we're gonna that's really bad.
Oh, I thought Connor was a given, so that's why I didn't mention him. But yeah,
so he's going to be. We should have mentioned him more as the back in the backcourt. I do think he's going to come off the bench though. So that's my
which I don't love, but I can see, because I feel like he deserves a starting role.
I mean, I think it's going to come down to him or Kendall Blue. I mean, unless maybe they want to go, maybe they go with Kendall Blue and Connor Esigian, as like your 2 and 3. I mean, that's possible too. So I do think they're going to want one of those, whether it's Price, Sanford, or Kendall Blue or Esigian to come off the bench. And I could see Connor playing a similar role that he did last year, because his usage rate actually was almost as high as Bryce Williams. So like when Connor came in, like he was the go-to scorer, and not that he's not going to play with those other. I mean, basically, like Connor didn't start, but he essentially finished almost every game. So I don't know how that's all going to work out, but I mean, he made a bunch of threes this year, so he's also going to be a focal point of this team. So little brain fart on my part. Sorry, I didn't mention him with the two guards. I don't know how I kind of forgot about that, but he's definitely going to be in that mix, and he's going to play multiple spots, and he's going to hit probably 73s next year, whether he starts or not. So that's as long as he shoots a high percentage, that's all I care about.
Yeah, they were able to, like I said, they were able to get shooters, and Connor. I know fans were frustrated with him at the end of last season, but when you take a look at what he did in the Crown and how he kind of helped provide that scoring lift, I think that's a better kind of preview of what's to come.
Yeah, and he averaged 10.7 points per game. Shot let's see, 37% from three, made 2.2 3-pointers per game. Like there's nothing else that Nebraska could have asked out of Connor Essegian this season. 78, he made 78 3-pointers. Like that's getting it done. I'm going to look back, but that might be more than Keisei Tominaga made his last season at Nebraska. So,
which is crazy because I feel like Keisei, like, I don't know, his 78 or whatever were different than Connor's.
Yeah, and I think with Keisei too, I think just it's like you remember all the dagger threes, but I think people forget like how good that dude was. Just like, oh, you're going to defend my 3-point shots? Yeah, he made 76 as a junior.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and he made 66 the year before. So, like in terms of just 3-point shooting, Connor's right there. But the thing about Tominaga is he did a lot of it too with just people draped around him. Like Connor didn't have that, as much attention. I think that's why, like you're saying, it felt different because it was like he was making like 30 footers over 2-3 people sometimes,
yeah.
Like shooting shots that nobody should shoot and still making them. Like he's still, I said that Bryce Williams like probably deserves to be on the Nebraska like Mount Rushmore, and I don't think Keisei does, but he's still like in my heart of hearts, like he's still probably one of my favorites. Like
I don't know, because he brought an electricity to the game that is hard to replicate, and the way he moved without the basketball and how he was constantly working, I think maybe that's why his 3-point shots feel a little bit different than Essegian's, but yeah. I think he deserves a place on the Nebraska basketball Mount Rushmore because he got more people excited about the program, even on a national level, than anybody I can remember in recent memory.
Oh, you're gonna make the boomers so mad now, Danny.
Whatever. That's what I do all day. All day I just push my stuff.
The boomers are gonna be so mad.
Bring back Coach Osborne. Bring back the days of the leather helmets. Like, be quiet.
Because let's see. Because I'm trying to think of who would be okay. So Eric Piatkowski obviously is on there, and Tyronn Lue is on there, and then I have to. There's got to be other really good players. I just don't know his Nebraska history as well as some others. I got to look back at some of Danny Nee's teams because, like, I think they had some other NBA players that were pretty good. But yeah, it's close. It's definitely close though. Tominaga's probably in the conversation. Eric Strickland, that's the guy I was trying to think of. So he was all Big 8 player. Looking back at his career, so he averaged 16, 14. So I don't know. Tominaga definitely be in the mix, but Eric Strickland probably would be up there as another guy. I feel like there was a really good player in like the 70s, but I could be wrong. But yeah, I mean, I definitely think Tominaga's in the conversation. It's kind of close. Yeah, but I do believe that Bryce would be on there for sure. It's hard to say too though with Bryce because he only played 2 years in Nebraska, so that's the other part of it. It's like, how do you weigh those types of things? Because it's not like you're going to have like 4 years, and even Tominaga wasn't. I think he only played at Nebraska for 3 years, so you just don't get as many guys that are like 1 through 4, graduate. I'm trying to actually look. I found an article on your site here, Cornhuskers Wire. So Rich King is another guy. Dave Hoppin. I don't know enough about these guys to say if they're better than Tominaga or not, but definitely in that range. So yeah, and if you're talking about the coach for the Mount Rushmore team, it would have to be obviously Danny Nee, but
I
maybe
remember Eric Strickland on my Celtics at
yeah,
the later years of his career.
so I think he would be in there, but and he was on some of those teams in the 90s that were really good too. I think
Yeah, he
he
was.
actually was on that. I think he was on the team that won the 96 NIT.
Yeah, because Strickland's NBA career, I'm looking at all the numbers right now. His career began in '97, and he played until 2005. So he probably was on that '94 team.
Yep. So yeah, interesting. And then Rich King, I'm seeing here was a first round was a first round pick back in 1992. So he might be another guy he was drafted 14th overall, so he must have been pretty damn good. So he might be up there. And then Dave Hoppin,
Mm-hmm.
three-time All Big Eight selection and All American in 1986. So actually, I don't know. Eric Strickland might not be on the list. So I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few guys. Some of you people who followed Nebraska, in those other years, 80s and 90s, definitely, get into the comment section. I remember Piatkowski and Strickland. I was I moved to Nebraska in like 1991. So like, but I was only like 5 years old. So like, I really didn't, Rich King was probably too young for me. Eric Piatkowski is the guy I remember. I remember Tyronn Lue. I remember Eric Strickland. I remember Danny Nee. I got to meet Danny Nee once, so that was pretty
That's
cool.
cool.
Yeah, he was a cool guy. But I still think that Fred Hoiberg is going to surpass him and get our first NCAA tournament win. I don't know when that prediction is going to come true, but that is my prediction for the next like 4 or 5 years in Nebraska basketball.
What's really interesting is that Nebraska basketball has had 3 recent NBA draft picks in Roby, Delano Banton, and Bryce McGowan. So there's been a recent influx of talent coming and being developed in the program. Of course, Roby, I think, was developed more by Tim Miles, but I mean, still, in recent history, the Nebraska basketball alum have done okay in the NBA.
Yeah, hopefully we'll start getting more guys in there. I'm excited to see where Bryce goes. So anyway, we will wrap it up there, you guys, with our Mount Rushmore. We have our depth chart predictions. We'll be back on Saturday. We're going to do a Saturday morning chat. We'll probably talk about some spring ball. Maybe we'll have another transfer portal edition by then.
Yell at me in the comments and tell us what you think or how I'm wrong.
Yeah, which I'm sure we probably will. So, all right, you guys, thanks for listening. Get in the comment section, hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. And as always, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.